So thank you very much, and welcome also from me to everybody. So we have heard our subject today is Cosmogenesis, the rebirth of the universe. Frank Lowes, emeritus professor of physics from the University of Oxford, started his book Antimatter with a reference to Genesis. And he wrote, in the beginning there was nothing. There was darkness on the face of the void. Then came a burst of energy, let there be light. There was light. The way it came from, I don't know who says. What we do know is what happened next. This energy coagulated into matter and its mysterious opposite, antimatter, in perfect counterbalance. Ordinary matter is familiar stuff which makes air, rocks, and living things. But matter's faithful opposite, identical in all respect, except that deep inside its atoms everything is spectral-framed, is unfamiliar. This is antimatter, the antithesis of matter. Today, antimatter does not exist normally, at least on Earth. A vanishing act that is one of the unexpected mysteries or unexplained mysteries of the universe. But we know that antimatter is real, because scientists have made small pieces of it. With antimatter, the negative image of matter, we make contact with the gods of creation. Here we begin to see how our universe emerged from the Big Bang. Matter has a mirror image, antimatter. This is an amazing statement from an eminent scientist, and is by far not the only one. Has science's discovery of antimatter penetrated into the astral light? The astral light is not a universally diffused stuff, but pertains to our Earth and all other bodies of the system, on the same plane of matter with it. Our astral light is, so to speak, the Linga Sharia, or aerial body of our Earth. Only instead of being its primordial prototype, as in the case of the Saya or the Red Double, it is the reverse. As the human and animal bodies grow and develop in the model of their archetypal doubles, it is the astral light that is born from the terrene emanations, grows and develops after its prototypal parent, and reflects everything reversed in its treacherous wave, both from the upper planes and from its lower solid plane, the earth. And again, under astral prakritic consciousness, or nature in its primeval condition, objects are reversed. This again illustrates the elusive character of this plane. With the discovery of the perplexing subatomic world at the turn of the 20th century, many scientists have turned to Eastern mysticism for inspiration. The British Nobel Prize laureate Bertrand Russell, philosopher, mathematician, historian, and political activist, for example, once wrote in a fortnightly philosophical magazine called Manners, "The greatest men who have been philosophers have felt the need for both of science and mysticism." The attempt to harmonize the two was what made their life. In an article called "The World as I See It," published in the American magazine The New Yorker in November 1947, Albert Einstein said, "How can an educated person stay away from the Greeks? I have always been far more interested in them than in science. I maintain that cosmic religious feeling is the strongest and noblest incitement in scientific research." And in a conversation with Dr. Fritjof Capra, an Austrian-born American physicist. Werner Heisenberg, one of the pioneers of quantum mechanics, told Capra that he had spent some time in India in 1929. In 1929, as a guest of the celebrated Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore, with whom he had long conversation about science and Indian philosophy. In this instruction to Indian thought, Heisenberg took great comfort. He began to see that the recognition of relativity, interconnectedness, and impermanence as fundamental aspects of physical reality, which had been so difficult for himself and his fellow physicists, was the very basis of the Indian spiritual tradition. After this conversation, some of the ideas that seemed so crazy suddenly made much more sense to him and were a great help. These are just a few examples. The substratum of world sciences, religion and philosophy is theosophy, or the divine wisdom, a term coined by the Alexandrian philosophers called Philhellenes, the lovers of truth. The name dates back from the 3rd century of our era and began with Ammonius Saccas and his disciples. Theosophy is pure divine ethics, or dharma, a way of life as it is called in the world's oldest religion, Vedanta. The eternal tradition or the eternal way beyond human history. In their philosophy, Brahman is the impersonal supreme principle of the universe, from the essence of which all emanates and in which all returns. It is immaterial and endless, pervading all. With other words, it is mystic space. This principle is either active or dormant in regular intervals as Manvantara, the active period from the Sanskrit root man or mind to think, symbolizing mankind as a whole, the self-existent or logos, followed by Pralaya, an equal period of dissolution and rest. It is so poetically called the days and nights of Brahma in Hindu philosophy. The appearance and disappearance of world is like a regular tidal ebb and flux and reflux, the absolute universality of the law of periodicity, which physical science has observed and recorded in all departments of nature. It is one of the absolute fundamental laws of the universe, says the Secret Doctrine, and that includes the rebirth of the whole universe, or cosmos. In a new study published in Physical Review Letters, Dr. Stephen Gielen from the Imperial College of London and Dr. Neil Tarrant, director of the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics in Canada, have shown how a rebirth of the universe, or a big bounce, as they call it, might be possible. In the early universe, as everything was incredibly small, it may have been governed solely by the principle of quantum mechanics rather than the large-scale physics we are seeing today. Quantum mechanics deals with the mathematical description of the motion and interaction of subatomic particles. The model contains a few simple ingredients that are most likely to have formed the early universe, such as the fact that it was filled with radiation, with almost no matter. With these, the model predicts that the effect of quantum mechanics, or the motion and interaction of subatomic particles, would allow the universe to spring from a previous universe that was contracting, rather than from a single point of broken physics. Dr. Turok said the big surprise in our work is that we could describe the earliest moments of the hot Big Bang quantum mechanically under very reasonable and minimal assumptions about the matter present in the universe. And these assumptions, the Big Bang was a big bounce in which contracting reversed to expansion. Sir Roger Penrose, Professor Emeritus of Mathematics at Oxford University, also proposed that our universe is serial, that the Big Bang was preceded by a previous iteration, before that another one, and so on, which is supported by the evidence from the cosmic microwave background radiation, and that physical constant, conscious precursors and platonic values embedded in the fine structure of the universe mutate and evolve with each cosmological cycle. In other words, the universe is subject to evolution. The Secret Doctrine describes this event with the following words. Nature runs down and disappears from the objective plane, only to re-emerge after a time of rest out of the subjective, and to reascend once more. Our cosmos and nature will run down only to reappear on a more perfect plane after every pralaya or rest. In the Kabbalistic works which will found the very history of the evolution of those countless globes which evolve after periodical pralaya or rest, rebuilt from all material into new forms. The previous globes disintegrate and reappear, transformed and perfected for a new phase of life. In the Kabbalah, worlds are compared to the sparks which fly under the hammer of the great architect, which is law, the law which rules all the smaller creatures. The collective or universal mind, which is composed of various and numberless hosts of creative powers, are all governed by law. However infinite and manifested time, this universal mind is still finite and contrasted with the unborn and undecaying space in its supreme essential aspect. And since that which is finite cannot be perfect, it is subject to evolution and progress. Nothing seems to be absolutely perfect under finite conditions. There's always room for improvement and new opportunities. Another aspect seems to be studying and learning from reflection. Since the energy behind creativity cannot be suppressed, it will always find a new outlet and change. One has to acquire true self-consciousness, or paramasa, in order to understand samvriti, or the origin of delusion, says the Secret Doctrine. Paramasa is composed of two words, parama, which means above everything, and asa means comprehension. Paramasa is a synonym of the Sanskrit term svadambhidana, or the reflection which analyzes itself. And then it seems as if improving itself by constantly building new forms of refined expression to achieve the goal of perfection on different levels of consciousness. The Pachamama Alliance is a global community that offers people the chance to learn, connect, engage, travel, and cherish life for the purpose of creating a sustainable future that works for all. One of their close allies is the gifted New Mexican medicine man, Arcangel Schwaller, a strong advocate of the protection of the sacred headwaters of the Amazon basin, working with the indigenous people. Roswala and these native people never lost their strong connection with nature. They still know that high-frequency vibration activate consciousness, nourish, heal, and invite the most luminous forces in nature. Roswala's theory is that the humans who designed the pyramids and ancient temples in Egypt, Guatemala, Peru, and other places built a world on ice which was like the mirror, where the cosmic dance could reflect itself and resonate, and where all beings could receive the nourishment of this vibration. The ideology of the Pachamama Alliance is evolutionary activism, based on the idea that we humans are aware of evolution and our place in the circle of life, that we are the universe, becoming aware of itself, also pointing to the ancient wisdom that we are meant to be caretakers of the earth and our extraordinary responsibility to create a better world for all beings. This wisdom also reunites with Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, an astrophysicist at the American Museum of Natural History, who once said, "I look up at the night sky and I know that yes, we are part of the universe. We are this universe. But perhaps more important than both of those facts is that the universe is within us." Frank Wilczek, Nobel Prize laureate and professor of physics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, once wrote in his book, A Beautiful Question, that nature's technology, whereby she builds the material world, is quite advanced. Fortunately, nature let us study her tricks. By paying close attention, we ourselves become magicians. The voice of the silence explains this process with the following words: help nature and work with her. And nature will regard thee as one of her creators and make obeisance. And she will open wide before thee the portals of her secret chambers. Lay bare before thy gaze the treasures hidden in the very depths of her pure virgin bosom. Unsullied by the hand of matter, she shows her treasures only to the eye of spirit. The eye which never closes, the eye for which there is no veil in all her kingdoms. What does the divine wisdom tell us about the rebirth of the universe, and how does science complement these teachings by now? There was nothing, wrote Professor Close in his above-mentioned book, and Theosophy confirms. There's neither space nor time when the first logos or sound of the verb appears. Duration is always. It is eternal, but it is outside of space and time. Once it is differentiated, it is all in space and time. It is all in space and time. The expansion of the universal matrix, it is not an expansion of a small center of focus, but the development of limitless subjectivity into limitless objectivity, not being an increase in size, but a change of condition. Originating from the last vibration of the seventh eternity, or last period of activity that thrills through infinitude when a new manvantara or active period is about to begin. And this last vibration, announcing a new dawn, is synonymous with the first unmanifested logos at the time of the primordial radiation, or the first light that appears. Space as an abstraction is endless, but in its concreteness and limitation, space becomes a representation of something. That is what the ancient called deity. In his book, The Elegant Universe, Brian Greene, professor of physics and mathematics at Columbia University in New York, wrote, "As the clock is turned back to ever earlier times, the whole cosmos is compressed in the size of an orange, a lemon, a pea, a grain of sand, and to yet tinier stars still. Extrapolation all the way back to the beginning, the universe would appear to have begun as a point in which all matter and energy is squeezed together, describing the whole of the universe, not just something within the universe. Carrying on to the beginning, there is simply no space outside of the primordial pinpoint. And the Secret Doctrine is explaining it like this. At the time of cosmic activity, a staggering number of years, according to Hindu calculations, between the periods of rest and activity, is at the center of spiritual conscious energy from Parabrahm, a Sanskrit term for the ever noble, attributeless and secondless reality, even beyond Brahman, or the impersonal, nameless universal principle on which no speculation is possible. Yes. Not even esoteric philosophy can claim to know except by analogical inference that which took place before the reappearance of our solar system and previous to the last Mahapralaya, says the Secret Doctrine. And that no adept has ever penetrated beyond this point or the veil of primitive cosmic matter. The highest, the most perfect vision is limited to the universe of form and matter and our solar system. This center of spiritual energy from the unknown source at the start of a new period of activity is unborn and eternal, acting through the Logos, symbolized by the point in the circle. The point in the circle is the unmanifested Logos. The manifested Logos is a triangle. Pythagoras speaks of the never manifested monad which lives in solitude and darkness. When the hour strikes, it radiates from itself one, the first number. This number descending produces two, the second number, and two in its turn produces three, forming a triangle, the first complete geometrical figure in the world of form. It is this ideal or abstract triangle which is the point of the mundane egg, which after gestation and the third remove will start from the cosmic egg, or Hiranyagarbha, to form a triangle. Let us make no mistake the importance and potency of numbers as symbols. Everything in the universe was framed according to the eternal proportion of combinations of numbers. God or deity geometrizes, said Plato. And numbers and numerals are the fundamental basis of all systems of mysticism, philosophy, religion, confirms H.P.B. in their collected writings. Numbers and geometrical figures are not an invention of the human mind. They are intrinsic in the fabric of the universe by which it manifests itself. According to Pythagoras, the world has been called forth out of chaos by sound and harmony, constructed according to the principles of musical proportion. And the Master Kutumi confirms, like every other orb of space, our Earth has, before obtaining its ultimate materiality, to pass through a gamut of 7 stages of density. I say gamut advisedly, he says, since the diatonic scale best affords an illustration of the perpetual rhythmic motion of descending and ascending cycle of Swanwick, a Buddhist term for the matrix of the universe, graduated as it is by tones and semitones. As every atom in every object of nature, animate or inanimate, sings its own keynote and produces its own sound, and has its own color and number, confirms H.P.B. So every man, flower, tree, and every celestial body is a play and interplay of sounds, both loud and faint, interblending in a marvelous symphony, as well as being a beautiful intermingling of flashing and scintillating colors, which all have their own frequency of vibration, which can be amplified and made audible. Times is a digital media company with its headquarters in New York City and one of the leading technology news sites on the internet, reporting on new innovation. In an article called "What Sound Does an Atom Make?", we can read about the latest technology used by scientists at Chalmers University of Technology in Gothenburg, Sweden. The team of scientists constructed a millimeter-long artificial atom and placed it on superconducting material to measure its electrical energy. Superconducting is the inability of a metal, for example, allowing electricity to flow through it easily, especially at very low temperatures. They excited the atom along the material to detect sound waves using a microphone chip that had long metallic fingers, capturing and converting the acoustic waves so that they could see the sound in microwaves, one phonon at a time. A phonon is a quantum of energy or quasi-particle associated with a compressional wave, such as sound in a medium, in air or in water. Although the sound amplitude or strength is very weak, by exciting an atom, it creates a sound, one phonon at a time. It is the weakest sound possible that can be detected. Published in the journal Science, the study confirmed that sounds are made anytime by something that moves or vibrates, no matter how small the substance is. The scientists found that the artificial atom made a D-note sound, about 20 octaves above the highest note on the piano, and a pitch inaudible to human ears. Frank Wilczek, Nobel Prize laureate and professor of physics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, also reminds us in his book A Beautiful Question, Finding Nature's Deep Design, that matter is built up from atoms, which are in a precise sense tiny musical instruments. In the interplay with light, they realize the mathematical music of the spheres that surpass the visions of Pythagoras, Plato, and Kepler. The molecules and ordered material, those atomic instruments play together as harmonious ensembles in synchronized orchestra. There is no logical reason to expect that the mathematics developed to understand music should have anything to do with atomic physics. Yet the same concepts and equations turn out to govern both domains. Atoms are musical instruments, and the light they emit makes their tones visible. Atoms emerge from the law, and they emerge as beautiful objects. Physical atoms, mathematically described as three-dimensional objects that will, to the animated spirit of an artist, yield images of exceptional beauty. And to show how exact is science's occultism, says the Mahatma Kutumi, let me tell you that the means we avail ourselves of are all laid down for us in a code as humanity, to the minutest details. Our laws are immutable as those of nature, and they were known to man an eternity before modern science was hatched. We build our philosophy upon experiment and deduction. There is but one element, says the Bhagavad. This element is, so to speak metaphysically, one substratum or permanent cause of all manifestations in the phenomenal universe. The ancients speak of the 5 cognizable elements of ether, fire, air, water, and earth. These basic cognizable elements are represented in the 3-dimensional universe by the 5 Platonic solids. So we heard a lot of it already from Pam, which is just tiny representation. The tetrahedron is the first of the Platonic solids to appear. It has 4 triangles, 4 vertices, or points where the lines of the face of the triangles meet, and 6 edges. It stands for fire. It is fire, say the esoteric teachings, the most perfect and unadulterated reflection of the one flame. It is life and death, the origin and the end of every material thing. Fire is divine substance. And this fire of life was in every drop of the ocean of immortality. And the ocean was radiant light, which was fire, heat, and motion. Darkness vanished and was no more. It disappeared in its own essence. The octahedron stands for air, intermediate between fire and water. It has 8 triangular faces, 6 vertices and 12 edges, and 4 faces coming together at each point or vertex. But it stands already on a square, symbolizing substance, through which it projects itself into the lower dimension. The icosahedron has 20 triangular faces, 12 vertices and 30 edges, 5 faces coming together at each vertex. According to Plato, it stands for water. In all cosmogonies, water is the base and source of material existence, a term used by occultists in a generic sense, and which is used in cosmogony with a metaphysical and mystical meaning. Ice is not water, neither is steam, although they have precisely the same chemical composition. The cube has 6 square faces, 8 vertices and 12 edges, and 3 faces coming together at each vertex. The cube stands for earth or material existence. The dodecahedron has 12 pentagonal faces, 20 vertices, 3 faces and 30 edges, 3 coming together at each vertex. Is the dual of icosahedron and the most mysterious and powerful of the 5 solids. Plato said it is cosmos itself. In a lecture called The 12 Signs of the Zodiac, Subaru, a Hindu by birth and a theosophist at H.P.B. time, wrote that the universe is bound by pentagons in the symmetrical shape of a dodecahedron. That the macrocosm is similar to the macrocosm is similar to the microcosm, and that the real universe of noumena, or all things in himself, as the German philosopher Kant will call it, is in certain passages of the Vedas and Upanishads represented by an icosahedron, and that the dodecahedron and an icosahedron can exist within each other. In an article called The Shape of the Universe, published in the magazine The Economist, it was reported that Plato has been proved right when he thought that the figure of the whole universe was a dodecahedron. According to Jean-Pierre Luminet and his colleagues from the Paris Observatory, the universe is indeed a dodecahedron. They base their argument on data from the American satellite Philippines and microwave anisotropy probe, which analyzed data from the microwave radiation shortly after the universe began. They say that the wavelength of this radiation is remarkably pure, and that it has harmonics associated with it like a musical scale note. These harmonics, like those of a note, reflect the shape of the object in which the waves are generated. In the case of a musical note, that object is a musical instrument. In the case of the microwave background, that object is the universe itself. Dr. Luminen's calculations suggest, as a familiar dodecahedron has an inside and an outside, so does what he calls a dodecahedral space. Such a space has no boundary, even though it has a finite volume, and that it is quintessentially a dodecahedron, one up to the Greeks, he said. As quoted from H.P.B before, number set limits to the formative hand of nature. Why are there just 5 platonic solids? Regular polyhedrons, like the platonic solids, are not solid figures, formed by flat surfaces. Every face, every edge length, every facial angle, as well as the angles between two faces, are equal to all the others that constitute the polyhedron. All planes are flat and not concave or dented. Professor Franz Wilczek, whom I mentioned before, points out that by trying to add more than the above-mentioned shapes, which are a common vertex, we run out of space and cannot accommodate the accumulated angles anymore to complete the figure. It lies flat. The 5 platonic solids are the only finite regular solids possible. He is convinced that Plato's vision had already anticipated modern ideas, now at the forefront of scientific thinking, when he taught that the physical world is not the ultimate reality, but that there is an eternal and timeless world of ideas which exist independently and prior to physical embodiment. So what role does man play in this amazing spectacle of the manifested universe? Are we really the focal point by which the universe becomes aware of itself and evolves? The first lesson taught in esoteric philosophy is that the incognizable cause does not put forth evolution, whether consciously or unconsciously, but only exhibits periodically different aspects of itself to the perception of finite minds. Evolution is commenced by the intellectual energy of the Logos, the sound, the word. The light of the Logos is a link between objective matter and subjective thought, the one instrument which with the Logos works. And that it is light. And what is light but the world illuminating and life-giving deity? Light is time. What from an abstraction has become a reality. If there were no light, there would not be time. The astral light, or the ether of space, preserves the images of all beings and things on its sensitized waves, and under certain atmospheric and electric conditions, pictures and subjective scenes, hence invisible under ordinary normal conditions, will be thrown out into objectivity. Space is the real world, while our world is an artificial one. It is a one unity throughout its infinitude in its bottomless depths. As on its elusive surface, a surface studded with countless phenomenal universes, systems, and mirage-like worlds. Nevertheless, to the Eastern occultist, who is an objective idealist at the bottom, in space is a real world, while our world is an artificial one, as the German mathematician and philosopher Leibniz would call it. In his book, Parallel Worlds, Michio Kaku physics professor of City University in New York, compares the manifestation of the universe with quantum theory, where every particle is associated with a wave. The wave tells us the probability of finding the particle in any point. The universe, when it was very young, was smaller than a subatomic particle, he says. Therefore, the universe itself had perhaps a wave function. And since an electron can exist in many states at the same time, perhaps the universe also existed simultaneously in many states described by a super wave function. Michio Kaku quoted from the Nobel Prize laureate in physics Steven Weinberg, who compared the multiple universe theory to a radio. All around us are hundreds of different radio waves, broadcasting from different stations. If you turn on a radio, we can only listen to one frequency at a time. Likewise, in our universe, we are tuned into the frequency that corresponds to physical reality. But there's an infinite number of parallel realities coexisting with us. Although we cannot hear them, each has a different frequency and energy. Another interesting speculation comes from the American theoretical physicist Professor John Wheeler, which starts with the assumption that information is at the root of all existence. When we look at the moon, a galaxy, or an atom, their essence is in the information stored within them, which sprang into existence when the universe observed itself. He calls it participatory universe, the idea that the universe adapts to us in the same way that we adapt to the universe, that our very presence makes the universe possible. The mind reels when we realize that according to the interpretation of quantum mechanics, all possible worlds exist with us, speculates Professor Michio Kaku. If this is true, why don't we see these alternate universes? This is where decoherence comes in. Our wave function is decoherent with the other worlds. The waves are no longer in phase with each other. This means that the slightest contamination with the environment will prevent the various wave functions from interacting with each other. In his book, The Visionary Window, A Quantum Physicist's Guide to Enlightenment, Dr. Hamid Goswami, Professor Emeritus of Nuclear Physics from the University of Oregon, tells us about what he calls monistic idealism, which is also known in Vedanta in India and the Tao in China. In the Eastern traditions of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism, a transcendent consciousness rather than matter is the ground of all being. All else is epiphenomena, or secondary phenomena occurring alongside the primary phenomena, matter and self included. Consciousness is both inside and outside of the material space-time reality. As transcendent or outside, it is pure, unmanifested consciousness. Immanent or inside, it appears split at self and the world, subject and object. But this split or separateness is epiphenomena, brought forth by a mysterious force called Maya, a power by which the universe becomes manifest. It is called forward in Tibetan mythology, the essence of cosmic electricity. The most important opponents of monistic idealism in the West were Plato, Plotinus, Georg Friedrich Hegel, from whose writings H.P.B. quoted quite frequently, Immanuel Kant, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, and Jakob Böhme. They pointed out that their philosophy is based on investigation, that consciousness can be known directly in its groove with suchness, because we are that. Professor Goswami points out that science deals with phenomena, but spirituality is concerned with what is beyond phenomena. Stephen Hawking and other scientists have suggested that the early universe was a quantum object. The universe began as a wave function, a superposition of many baby universes of possibility. The assumption of quantum universe solves the problem of the beginning. The answer is simple. There is no beginning. There is only possibility. The important question then is how the possibility becomes actual. The universe of possibilities exists in potential, but how does it manifest to become physical reality? In particle physics, it is said that measurement or observation collapses the wave function of an electron and any other material object. In monistic idealism, consciousness transcends physical reality and collapses the wave function of the universe in an observation event. What or who are these conscious incipient forces in an observation event, collapsing the wave function of possibilities? The one important great architect of the universe is Ma'at, the universal mind. And Ma'at is a symbol, an abstraction, an aspect which assumes a hazy entity form in all a materializing conception of man, says H.P.B. The divine mind is and must be before differentiation takes place. It is called the divine ideation, which is eternal in its potentiality and periodical in its potency, and it becomes Ma'at, anima mundi, or universal soul. But remember that however you name it, each of these conceptions has a most metaphysical, most material, and also intermediate aspect, says H.P.B. And that the universal mind is only another name for the absolute out of time and space. It is not an evolution, least of all a creation, but simply one of the aspects of the absolute which knows no change, which ever was, which is, and will be. Probably derived from the term Absu, a Korean expression for mystic space. The Absolute is dormant, latent mind itself, and cannot be otherwise in true metaphysical conception. It is only its shadow which becomes differentiated in the collectivity of the Dhyanis, or Ahi, or the intelligent forces which are the vehicle for the manifestation of the divine or universal thought and will, and which give to an enacting nature her laws. They are not personifications of the powers of nature, as erroneously taught, says H.P.B. In other words, behind the power of nature there is a transcendental force of intelligence that guides them. The German physicist and Nobel Prize laureate Max Planck, originator of the quantum theory of energy, came to the same conclusion when he said, as a physicist, that is a man who has devoted his whole life to the holy prosaic science, the exploration of matter, no one would surely suspect me of being a fantast. And so, having studied the atom, I'm telling you that there is no matter as such. All matter arises and persists only through a force that causes the atomic particles to vibrate, holding them together in the tiniest of solar systems, the atom. Yet in the whole universe there is no force that is either intelligent or eternal. And we must therefore assume that behind the force there is a conscious, intelligent mind or spirit. This is the very origin of matter. The universe is worked and guided from within outwards. As above, so it is below. As in heaven, so on earth. And man, the microcosm and miniature copy of the macrocosm, is a living witness to this universal law and of the mode of action. There is design in the action of the seemingly blindest forces. The whole process of evolution with its endless adaptation is proof of it. Three distinct representations of the universe in three distinct aspects are impressed upon our thought by the esoteric philosophy as the pre-existing, evolved from the ever-existing, and the phenomenal, the world of illusion, the reflection and the shadow thereof. During the great mystery of the drama of life, known as the Manvantara, real cosmos is like an object placed behind this white screen upon which the thrown of Chinese shadows called forth by the magic lantern, H.P.B. referring to Plato. The actual figures and things remain invisible, while the wires of evolution are pulled by the unseen hands, and men and things are thus but the reflection on the white field of the realities behind the snares of Maya, or the great illusion. This was taught in every philosophy, in every religion, anti as well as post-illusion, in India and Chaldea, by the Chinese and by the Grecian sages. To put it plainly, ether is the astral light, and the primordial substance is Akasha, the upadi or vehicle of divine thought. In modern language, the latter, Akasha, would be better known cosmic ideation, spirit. The former, ether or astral light, cosmic substance or matter. These are alpha and the omega of being, about the two facets of the absolute existence, says H.P.B. There's one great difference between the astral light and the Akasha, which must be remembered. The latter is eternal, the former is periodic. The astral light changes not only with the Manvantaras, but also with every sub-period and planetary cycle all round. The prototypes or ideas of things exist first on the plane of divine eternal consciousness, and thence become reflected and reversed in the astral light, which also reflects on its lower individual plane the life of all earth, recording it on its tablets. Therefore is the astral light called illusion. Every molecule is a mirror of the universe, every microcosm the mirror of the macrocosm. As the esoteric philosophy teaches us, the astral light is simply the dregs of Akasha, or the universal ideation in its metaphysical sense. When after unimaginable cycles of time, absolute truth having conquered relative truth, the inhabitants of the mysterious regions are thus supposed to have reached the state called mystic phraseology, Svasamvedana, self-analyzing reflection, and Paramasa, or that absolute consciousness of the personal immersed in the impersonal ego, which is above all, hence above illusion, in every sense. The evolutionary goal is reached, and the preconditions are set forth for the next Manvantara, to start from an equally long period of time. The Secret Doctrine teaches the progressive development of everything, worlds as well as atoms, and this stupendous development has neither conceivable beginning nor imaginable end. Our universe is only one of an infinite number of universes, links in the great cosmic chain of universes, each one standing in the relation of the effect as regards its predecessors, and being a cause as regards to its successor. The appearance and disappearance of the universe are pictures as an outbreathing and inbreathing of the great breath, which is eternal and which, being motion, is one of the three aspects of the Absolute. abstract space and duration being the other two. When the great breath, the one existence, breathes out a thought, this thought becomes a cosmos. So also is it when the divine breath is inspired again. The universe disappears in the bosom of the great mother or nature, who then sleeps wrapped in her invisible robes. The eternity of the universe in total is a boundless plain, periodically the playground of numberless universes, incessantly manifesting and disappearing, like the wink of the eye of self-existence. The appearance and disappearance of world is like a regular tidal ebb and flux and reflux. Light is the first begotten and the first emanation of the Supreme, and light is life. Both are electricity, the life principle, the anima mundi, pervading the universe, the electric purifier of all things. Light is the great protean magician, and under the divine will of the architect, the Dimorgos or the Logos, its multifarious omnipresent waves give birth to every form as well as to every living being. From its swelling electric bosom springs matter and spirit. Within its beams lie the beginnings of all physical and chemical action, and all cosmic and spiritual phenomena. It vitalizes and disorganizes. It gives life and produces death. And from its primordial point gradually emerge into existence the myriads of worlds, visible and invisible celestial bodies. It was at the ray of the first mother, 1 in 3, which is not the cause of either light or heat, but merely the focus or length by which the rays of the primordial light become materialized, concentrated upon our solar system, producing all the correlations of forces. The mathematical point called the cosmic seed is the monad of lightness, which contains the whole universe as the acorn the oak. This is the first bubble on the surface of boundless homogeneous substance or space. The bubble of differentiation in its incipient stage. It is the beginning of the Orphic or Brahma's egg. At the early stage of the development of the Theosophical movement in India, a document of valuable instruction was passed on to some principal workers at the time, known as the Letter of the Mahachoran. It says right on the first page that the doctrine we promulgate, being the only true one, must, the first page, that the doctrine we promulgate, being the only true one, must, supported by such evidence that we are preparing to give, become ultimately triumphant, like every other truth. Yet it is absolutely necessary to inculcate it gradually, enforcing its theories, unimpeachable facts for those who know, with a direct inference, deduced from and corroborated by the evidence furnished by modern exact science. Closing now with a chapter of the path to the heart of the universe from Dr. Porter's book, The Book of Golden Precepts, where it says, there is a hunger in every human heart, which nothing can satisfy or appease, a hunger for the real, a hunger for the sublime. It is a nostalgia of the spirit soul of man. The source of his homesickness is brought about the soul memory of our spiritual abode, whence it came and towards which we are now on our return journey. Men unconsciously, intuitively, unknown to the brain mind, see the vision sublime on the mountain top of the mystic east. Every human heart feels this yearning homesickness for the indescribable, the immortal, the deathless, for unutterable peace which is frontierless in its reaches, being the saving power in man which gives him hope and aspiration, raising the soul with the recognition of the glory that once was theirs. There is a pathway of wisdom and illumination which begins in any incarnation of each being right on this earth in the present life, the pathway of conscious and spiritual realization, leading ever inwards toward the mystic ease, which is the heart of the universe. This path is one and yet different for every human being, because every human being is himself that path. It is the very core of him, build and thought and consciousness, the very fabric of his own being, the stuff of nature's heart. Man is an inseparable part of the universe in which he lives, moves, and has his being. The same life flows through all things that are. The stream of consciousness that flows through the mighty whole of the universe flows therefore also through man, an inseparable portion of the universe. The pathway by which you may come into intimate relation with the heart of the universe itself is you yourself, your own being, your own nature, your spiritual self, not that of ordinary man, which is thus the poor reflection of the spiritual brilliance within. It is that inner path of self, of pure consciousness, pure love for all that is, unstained by earthly taint, your spiritual being. Following this path to your own inner God, your higher self, you will reach the mysteries and wonders of boundless infinitude through infinite time. Such happiness, peace, bliss, beauty, love, and inspiration will fill your whole being. That every breath will be a blessing, and every thought a sublime inspiration. Peace be with you. Thank you.